The first time Ava met Daniel, she was running late for work, balancing a coffee in one hand and a stack of lesson plans in the other. As she rushed into the little cafe on 5th Street, he was coming out, looking down at his phone. The collision sent her coffee flying, straight onto her own blouse. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," he stammered, immediately offering her a pile of napkins. His face was a mix of genuine panic and apology. And despite the disaster, Ava found herself laughing. "It's okay," she said, dabbing at the stain. "Happens more often than you'd think. Let me make it up to you," he said, flashing a nervous but warm smile. Coffee, maybe dinner. That was how it all started. Simple, unexpected, and surprisingly perfect. Daniel was everything Ava had dreamed of. Charming, hardworking, and deeply thoughtful. He listened to her, remembered the little things, and made her feel like the most important person in the room. Their first year together was a whirlwind of love and laughter. Late-night talks about their future, and lazy Sunday mornings wrapped up in each other's arms. Marriage felt like the natural next step. They bought a cozy house with a small backyard, talked about children, and planned a life filled with love and adventure. Ava, an elementary school teacher, adored the idea of raising a family with Daniel, who worked in finance but always made time for what mattered. For a while, everything was perfect. Then his mother moved in. "It's just temporary," Daniel reassured Ava as they carried boxes into the guest room. "She's having a hard time with the divorce, and I can't leave her alone right now." Ava wanted to be understanding. After all, family was important. But from the moment Eleanor stepped into their home, things started to shift. Subtly, at first, then all at once. At first, Ava tried to be welcoming. Eleanor was Daniel's mother, and she wanted to believe they could coexist peacefully. She reminded herself that the woman had just gone through a painful divorce, that she was likely feeling lost and vulnerable. But from the moment Eleanor unpacked her bags, their home no longer felt like Ava's. It started with little things. The kitchen was suddenly reorganized to Eleanor's preference. "It's more efficient this way," she said dismissively when Ava tried to put things back. The decorative pillows Ava had carefully chosen for the living room disappeared overnight, replaced by stiff, colorless ones Eleanor deemed more sophisticated. Then the comments began. "Daniel used to love home-cooked meals," Eleanor mused one evening, as Ava ordered takeout after a long day of work. "I always made sure he had a proper dinner." Or when Ava came home, late from grading papers, "You must be exhausted. Teaching must be so hard. It's a shame Daniel has to handle so much on his own." The real shift, however, happened in Daniel. He had always been supportive, always had Ava's back. But now, whenever Eleanor made a passive-aggressive remark, instead of defending his wife, he remained silent. Or worse, he agreed. "She's just old-fashioned," he said, when Ava finally confronted him. "She doesn't mean anything by it." But Ava saw the way Eleanor would whisper to him when she thought Ava wasn't looking. How her subtle criticisms slowly became Daniel's own. One night, as Ava packed Daniel's lunch for the next day, Eleanor watched from across the room. "He needs more protein," she commented, shaking her head. "When I took care of him, he was never this thin." Daniel chuckled. "She's got a point, babe. Maybe we should switch things up." Ava froze. The man who had once adored everything she did now questioned her at every turn. She had thought Eleanor's presence was temporary, but now it felt permanent, like an uninvited shadow creeping into every corner of their marriage. Ava had spent the entire day preparing for this moment. She wanted it to be perfect. The soft glow of candlelight, the rich aroma of homemade lasagna, the warmth of a quiet dinner, just the two of them. A night to remind Daniel of what they had before Eleanor's influence seeped into every crack of their marriage. And most importantly, she was going to tell him the truth. She was pregnant. But Eleanor never let her have anything for herself. Dinner had barely begun when Eleanor sighed dramatically, setting down her wine glass with deliberate slowness. "Daniel, darling," she began, her voice heavy with concern. "There's something I need to tell you. I debated whether I should, but, as your mother, I can't stay silent." Ava's stomach twisted. Eleanor leaned in, whispering something into Daniel's ear. Ava couldn't hear the words, but she didn't have to. She saw the way his hand tightened around his fork, the flicker of confusion before it turned into raw, burning anger. He turned to her, his expression dark, his voice sharp. "Is it true?" Ava blinked. "What?" Daniel shoved his chair back so hard it scraped against the floor. "Have you been cheating on me?" The words hit her harder than any slap could have. "What?" Ava gasped, horrified. "Daniel, no, You've been sneaking off to meet another man, and now you're hiding something from me." His voice rang out, filled with suspicion and anger. Ava shook her head frantically. "That's not..." But before she could finish, his hand moved. The slap came so fast that she barely registered the impact before her body crashed against the wall. A sharp sting spread across her cheek, and the world blurred as nausea surged through her. And then it happened. The sickness she had been holding back all evening overwhelmed her. Right there, in front of them both, she threw up. Daniel recoiled in disgust. But then his eyes caught something on the floor. Ava followed his gaze. Her purse had fallen, spilling its contents, including the pregnancy test. Daniel's face drained of color. "Ava." His voice cracked, the fury from seconds ago dissolving into something else. "Are you?" Tears streamed down her face as she clutched her cheek. "I was going to tell you tonight," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. Daniel stared at the test, then at his own hand. The same hand he had just used to strike his pregnant wife. Ava stood frozen, her hand still pressed against her burning cheek. The air in the dining room felt thick, suffocating, as Daniel stared at the pregnancy test lying on the floor. His entire body tensed, his face draining of color, as the weight of what he had done settled over him. "Ava, he started, reaching toward her. She flinched. It was instinctive, immediate. Her body recoiled before her mind could even process it. The man she had once trusted completely had just struck her. No amount of regret in his eyes could erase that. Daniel's face crumbled at her reaction. "I didn't know. I thought, I need to leave." Ava's voice came out in a whisper, barely audible over the pounding of her own heart. She turned toward the door, her legs shaking beneath her. Just then, the door creaked open. Chloe stood in the entryway, her brows furrowed in concern. "I heard shouting," she said, scanning the room. Ava's tear-streaked face, the overturned chair, the scattered contents of her purse, the sheer tension that hung in the air like a storm about to break. "What the hell is going on?" Ava opened her mouth, but no words came out. Daniel stepped back, running a hand over his face. She's coming with me." Chloe cut him off, her voice firm. She moved to Ava's side, placing a protective hand on her arm. "And you'd better not try to stop her." "Ava," Daniel pleaded, his voice breaking. "Please, just let me explain." But Ava couldn't stay in this house. Not tonight, not after what had just happened. Without another word, she let Chloe guide her out the door. As they stepped onto the porch, a voice rang out behind them. "She's hysterical, Daniel." Eleanor scoffed, the click of her heels echoing against the hardwood floor. "You know how women get in her condition." The door slammed shut behind them, muffling Eleanor's words. But the damage had already been done. Ava knew, in that moment, that nothing would ever be the same again. The moment Ava stepped into Chloe's apartment, her body gave out. The weight of the evening, of everything that had just happened, crashed down on her all at once. Her legs buckled, and Chloe barely caught her in time, guiding her onto the couch. "You're safe now," Chloe murmured, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "Just breathe." But Ava couldn't. The memory of Daniel's hand striking her, of Eleanor's smug voice echoing behind her, played over and over in her mind. Her stomach twisted. The nausea hadn't gone away. Chloe must have noticed because she quickly disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a cup of ginger tea. "Sip this," she said gently. "It might help." Ava took the cup with trembling hands, staring at the dark liquid. The smell of ginger and honey filled the space between them. Chloe sat down beside her. "Talk to me," she urged softly. Ava's throat tightened. Her voice cracked. "He hit me." Saying it out loud made it real, in a way she hadn't been prepared for. Her breath hitched as tears welled up in her eyes again. Chloe's face hardened. "That bastard." Ava shook her head. It wasn't just him. Her voice was barely above a whisper. It was her. She whispered something to him, and he just believed her. "He turned on me like I was a stranger." Chloe exhaled sharply. "That woman is poison." Ava stared at the cup in her hands. "I was going to tell him tonight. I had it all planned." A humorless laugh escaped her lips. "Can you believe that? I thought maybe, just maybe, this would bring us closer." Chloe scoffed. "You could have handed him a winning lottery ticket, and if Eleanor had told him otherwise, he'd still throw it away." Ava's grip tightened on the cup. "I don't know what to do." Chloe didn't hesitate. "You stay here, as long as you need. And tomorrow, we figure out what comes next." For the first time that night, Ava allowed herself to believe she wasn't alone. The next morning, Ava woke to the sound of soft clinking from the kitchen. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The couch, the blanket draped over her, the dim morning light filtering through Chloe's curtains. It was all unfamiliar. Then reality hit her. Daniel, the slap, the pregnancy test, the way she had flinched from him. Her throat tightened. She had spent the night drifting between restless sleep and jolting awake, her mind replaying the events over and over. Chloe appeared in the doorway, holding a cup of coffee. "Morning," she said gently, setting the mug on the coffee table. "How are you feeling?" Ava swallowed hard. "Like I've been run over." Chloe sat beside her, pulling a knee up onto the couch. "He's been calling," she said, tapping her phone. "A lot. I blocked him after the 10th voicemail." Ava's stomach churned. She reached for her own phone, finding dozens of missed calls and messages from Daniel. "Daniel, Ava, please, talk to me. Daniel, I didn't mean it, I swear. Daniel, please don't shut me out. Eleanor, you're tearing this family apart with your dramatics. A good wife would come home and work things out." Ava's grip on the phone tightened. She exhaled sharply and typed her response. "Ava, you are not involved in decisions about my baby. Never have been, never will be." Then, with steady hands, she blocked Eleanor's number. Chloe let out a low whistle. Damn, that was satisfying to watch. Ava set her phone down, her hands still shaking slightly. "I need to talk to Daniel." Chloe's eyes narrowed. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Ava nodded. "Not to forgive him, not yet, but I need answers, and I need to set the rules if he's going to be in this baby's life." Chloe sighed, but then nodded. "Okay, but we do this smart, public place, and I'm not letting you go alone." Ava glanced out the window, her resolve hardening. She had spent too long letting other people dictate her life. This time, she would be the one in control. Ava arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, the same little cafe where she had first met Daniel, where he had spilled coffee on her lesson plans and nervously asked her to dinner. The memory felt like a lifetime ago. Now, as she sat near the entrance, her hands curled around a cup of tea, she braced herself for what was coming next. Chloe was parked across the street, watching. They had agreed on a safety plan. Public place, clear exit route, no unnecessary risks. Ava wouldn't let emotions cloud her judgment. At exactly 2 p.m., the bell above the door chimed. Daniel walked in alone, just as promised. He looked awful. His eyes were bloodshot, dark circles beneath them. His shirt was wrinkled, his posture stiff with tension. He spotted her and hesitated before making his way over. "Can I sit?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Ava nodded but said nothing. He lowered himself into the chair across from her, his gaze flickering to her stomach before darting away, shame clear in his expression. I kicked her out, he said without preamble. Last night. Ava blinked, startled. What? Eleanor, he clarified. She's gone. I packed her bags myself and told her to leave. She fought me on it, said I was turning against my own family. But I told her. He swallowed hard. I told her that if she stayed, I'd never get you back. Ava studied him carefully. His words sounded good, but words weren't enough anymore. Why now? She asked, voice steady. Why not before? Daniel exhaled shakily. Because I became her, he admitted, his voice cracking. The moment I hit you, I realized I wasn't protecting you. I was becoming everything I swore I'd never be. He wiped a hand over his face. I've seen a therapist and started treatment, both individual and couples counseling, if you're willing. I don't expect forgiveness, Ava, but I need you to know I will never be that man again. Ava remained silent, her hands tightening around her cup. She had come here for answers, but now she had a choice to make. Ava stared at Daniel, his words hanging between them like a fragile thread. I'm not coming home, she said finally, her voice steady but firm. Not today, maybe not ever, I don't know yet. Daniel's face fell, but he nodded. I understand. If we even have a chance, Ava continued, there are conditions, non-negotiable ones. Daniel leaned forward, desperate yet determined. Anything. Ava took a breath, steadying herself. Eleanor never comes near me or this baby again. No holidays, no visits, no updates. She is out of our lives completely. Done. His answer was immediate. I already told her she's not welcome. You go to therapy, not just for a few weeks. You commit to it. I will. He promised. I already started. And she hesitated, then pushed forward. If you ever raise a hand to me again, if you ever so much as let your anger get out of control, you lose everything. No discussions, no second chances. I will press charges and fight for full custody. Daniel swallowed hard, his hands gripping the edge of the table. I understand. Ava studied him, searching for any sign of hesitation. Instead, he pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and slid it across the table. What is this? She asked warily. A legal document, Daniel said. My lawyer is drafting it now. It states that if I ever hurt you again, you automatically get full custody of our child. Ava's breath caught. She hadn't expected him to go that far. I need you to believe me, Ava, he said, voice raw. I will never hurt you again. I will never be that man again. Ava exhaled, still unsure, but something inside her softened. We start with therapy, she said. We don't rush this. Daniel nodded. Whatever it takes. For the first time since that awful night, Ava felt something other than fear. Hope. Ava stood outside the coffee shop, the crisp evening air cooling the warmth that had settled in her chest. She glanced down at the folded document in her hands, the tangible proof of Daniel's promise. It wasn't trust, not yet, but it was a start. Behind her, Daniel lingered by the cafe entrance, watching her as if afraid she might disappear. He didn't reach for her. He didn't beg. He simply stood there, waiting. And that, more than anything, told Ava he was changing. She pressed a hand to her stomach, feeling the gentle flutter of movement within. Their baby. A life she had sworn to protect at all costs. Taking a slow breath, she turned to face Daniel once more. I'll see you at therapy, she said. A flicker of relief crossed his face, but he didn't push for more. I'll be there. Ava nodded, then walked away, each step feeling lighter than the last. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't walking toward Daniel. She was walking toward herself, and where that path would lead, only time would tell. Ava's story delivers a profound lesson about love, respect, and personal boundaries. A relationship cannot survive without respect and safety. Love does not mean enduring manipulation or violence. Ava once sacrificed and endured. to maintain her happiness, but in the end, she realized that true love cannot be a one-sided compromise. Violence, even once, is too much. Daniel may feel remorse, he may change, but that does not mean Ava has to return immediately. Forgiveness does not mean going back. It means setting clear boundaries. Daniel must prove his change through long-term actions, not just words. The story also emphasizes that family is not an excuse to accept toxic control. Ava spent too much time trying to please Eleanor and preserve her marriage, but she realized she had the right to choose a better life for herself and her child. Most importantly, you have the right to decide your own destiny. Do not let anyone make you feel unworthy of a love that is healthy, safe, and fulfilling. If you enjoy deep, emotional, and meaningful stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new update. Your support is the motivation that drives us to keep bringing you powerful stories. Once again, thank you for being here, and see you in the next story.